24 hours ago, I was a grieving father who just written a $15,000 check for what I believed was a healing family trip to Italy. Now I'm sitting alone in a foreign country, staring at a note that just shattered what was left of my heart. Maybe this will teach you that you can't buy family loyalty, old man. My son and his wife had stolen my passport, my wallet, everything, and left me to rot like garbage they were tired of carrying. They thought they'd abandoned a broken widower, too stupid and grief-stricken to fight back. They had no idea they'd just signed their own death warrant. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The note was still in my trembling hands when I realized my own son had just abandoned me in a foreign country, like a piece of luggage he didn't want to carry anymore. I read it again, hoping the words would somehow change. Maybe this will teach you that you can't buy family loyalty. Figure out yourself, old man. We'll be back when we're ready. D and B. My passport was gone. My wallet was gone. My phone was gone. Everything except the clothes on my back and the crushing weight of betrayal sitting on my chest like a boulder. 6 months after burying my wife, my only child treats me like this. I sat on the edge of the bed in that small hotel room in Castellina, in Chianti, staring at the handwriting I'd watched develop since Derek was 7 years old. The same careful letters he'd used to write Happy Father's Day, cards that I'd saved in a shoebox for 30 years. Now those same hands had written my abandonment notice. The morning had started so differently. Derek had knocked on my door around 9, that easy smile on his face that reminded me painfully of his mother. Hey, Dad, Brittany and I are going to hit some shops in Florence today. You know how she loves those designer places. I nodded, still groggy from another restless night. Sleep had been elusive since Maria died. Sounds good. What time should I be ready? Oh, you don't need to come. It's just boring shopping stuff. Why don't you relax here? Enjoy the countryside? We'll be back for dinner. I should have seen it then. The slight hesitation. The way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. But grief makes you stupid. Makes you want to believe the best in people, especially the people you love most. Are you sure? I don't mind. Dad, trust me. You'd hate it. All those crowded stores. Brittany trying on a million things. Stay here, enjoy the peace. This trip is supposed to be about healing, right? Healing. That's what Brittany had called it when she suggested this whole Italian adventure 3 weeks ago. Walt, you need to heal somewhere beautiful, like Maria always wanted. She'd even show me pictures on her phone of Tuscany's rolling hills, the ancient stone buildings, the vineyards. It's perfect for processing grief. I'd written a check for $15,000 that same day. First-class flights, luxury hotels, fancy restaurants. Anything to feel close to my kids again, to fill the terrible silence Maria's death had left behind. But now, sitting alone in this foreign hotel room, I realized I'd been played from the beginning. I stumbled to the front desk, my broken English tumbling out in panic. My son, my daughter-in-law, they have my passport. The woman behind the desk looked up with concerned dark eyes. Mid-50s, graying hair pulled back, the kind of face that had seen enough of life to recognize real distress. Signore, please sit, she said in accented but clear English. I am Juliana. Tell me what happened. I collapsed into the chair she offered, my 67-year-old knees suddenly feeling ancient. My family, they left me, took everything. I don't know what to do. Juliana's expression hardened as I explained, her husband Roberto appearing from the back office. They spoke rapidly in Italian, their voices rising with what sounded like indignation. Roberto shook his head, muttering something that made Juliana nod grimly. This is not right, Juliana said finally. Family does not do this. We will help you contact your consulate, yes? But what they didn't know about me would change everything. You see, Derek and Brittany thought they'd abandoned a helpless old Irish-American contractor who couldn't navigate a foreign country alone. They thought they'd left behind a grieving widower too broken and confused to fight back. They thought I was just Walter Mackenzie, the guy who built houses in Boston for 40 years, who wore work boots and spoke with thick accent, who didn't know the difference between prosciutto and pancetta. They had no idea that for the past 15 years, I'd been secretly studying Italian every Tuesday and Thursday night at the community college. They didn't know about the language apps on my phone, the Italian movies I watched with subtitles, the grammar books hidden in my workshop. They certainly didn't know why I'd started learning in the first place. It was for Maria. For our 25th wedding anniversary, I'd planned to surprise her with a trip to Italy to speak her grandmother's language in the country where her family had started. I wanted to see her face when I ordered our dinner in perfect Italian, when I asked for directions to the Colosseum without stumbling over the words. But then Maria got sick. Cancer moved fast, and Italy became a dream we'd never chase. I kept studying anyway. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was just something to do with my hands while she slept. Now listen to Juliana and Roberto speak. I understood every word. These people are animals, Roberto was saying. To abandon an elder like this after he paid for everything. We must call the police, Juliana replied. This is elder abuse. Clear and simple. They thought I was helpless. All of them did. They were about to learn how wrong they were. What I understood in that moment would have shocked them. Let me tell you how a grieving widower ends up funding his own abandonment in a foreign country. It started 3 weeks after Maria's funeral, when I was still wearing the same clothes for days and eating cereal for dinner. Derek and Brittany showed up at my house with concerned faces and a brilliant idea. Walt, you need to heal somewhere beautiful, like Maria always wanted, Brittany said, settling onto my couch like she owned it. She was 29, blonde, always perfectly put together in that expensive way that screamed credit card debt. Italy has such amazing energy for processing grief. I should have been suspicious. Brittany had never shown interest in my grief before. At the funeral, she'd spent more time taking selfies than comforting mourners. But Derek nodded along, his face serious with what I thought was genuine concern. Dad, we're worried about you being alone too much. Mom would want you to live, not just exist. My heart cracked a little more. Maria would have wanted that. She'd always dreamed of seeing Tuscany, walking through vineyards, eating real Italian food. We planned to go for our 25th anniversary, but cancer had other plans. I don't know, I said, staring at the photo of Maria on the mantel. It feels wrong, going without her. That's exactly why you should go, Brittany insisted, her voice sweet as honey, to honor her memory. And we'll come with you. Family healing trip. The price tag was steep. $15,000 for first-class flights, luxury hotels in Florence and the Tuscan countryside, reservations at restaurants where dinner cost more than I used to make in a day. But seeing Derek's enthusiasm, the way Brittany kept saying how healing it would all be, I wrote the check. Looking back, I should have noticed how quickly Brittany's tears dried up when I agreed to pay. Should have questioned why Derek suddenly became so affectionate, calling me daily to discuss trip details, when he'd barely spoken to me since the funeral. I should have paid attention to their financial situation. Derek's restaurant was struggling, had been for months. The trendy farm-to-table place he'd opened with my initial investment of $200,000 was hemorrhaging money. But I'd been too wrapped up in my own pain to ask hard questions. The trip started exactly as advertised. Beautiful hotels, incredible food, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than crushing loneliness. Derek seemed genuinely happy to spend time with me, asking about my construction days, laughing at my old stories. Brittany was charming, linking her arm through mine as we walked through Florentine markets. "Oh, Walt, you're so generous," she'd say after I'd pay for another expensive dinner. "Maria would be so proud of how you're taking care of family." I want to believe them so badly, but I noticed things. The way Brittany's eyes lit up when I handed over my credit card. How she was constantly on her phone, taking pictures not just of scenery, but of the luxury, the fancy hotel lobbies, the designer shops, the expensive wine bottles. Every moment was content for her social media empire. Derek was different too, in ways that made my contractor's instincts itch. He'd grown up in my house, learned my work ethic, but now he spoke differently. Pretentious words, comments about experiencing authentic culture that sounded rehearsed. He'd order wine like he was performing for an audience, making a show of swirling and sniffing while I stuck to beer. Dad, you know we'd do anything for you. He'd say whenever I looked overwhelmed by a restaurant menu full of words I supposedly couldn't pronounce. This trip is about healing. If only I'd trusted my instincts about what I overheard that first night in Florence. I'd gotten up for water around 2 a.m., padded past their room on the way to the hotel ice machine. Their door was cracked open, and I heard Brittany's voice, sharp and calculating. 3 more days of playing loving family. Then we ditch him in that little hill town. He'll be fine. These places are used to confuse tourists. Derek's response was muffled, but I caught enough. Restaurant needs extension on the loan just until... I stood frozen in the hallway, my bare feet suddenly cold against the marble floor. Surely I'd misheard. Surely my grief-addled brain was playing tricks. But the next morning, when Derek suggested the shopping trip to Florence without me, every alarm bell in my head started ringing. You'd hate it, Dad. All those crowded stores. Brittany trying on a million things. Stay here, enjoy the peace. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes. The slight tremor in his voice. The too casual way Brittany packed all their belongings while claiming they were just going for the day. I'd been a contractor for 40 years. I knew when someone was lying about the foundation. Now, back in the present, Juliana was showing me how to use the hotel's computer. You can contact your embassy from here, Signora Mackenzie, and perhaps call family back home. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Family back home. Right. Instead, I typed in Derek's name, then Brittany's Instagram handle. What I discovered online about my loving family made my blood run cold. They weren't just shopping in Florence. They were celebrating. Brittany's latest post showed them at an expensive restaurant. Champagne glasses raised, Derek's arm around her waist. The caption read, "Finally free to enjoy Italy the right way. Airplane bottle with popping cork hashtag. Authentic hashtag. No filter hashtag living your best life." The comments were even worse. Friends congratulating them on ditching the dead weight and finally having a real vacation. But it was Derek's own post that hit like a punch to the gut. A video of him walking through the Uffizi Gallery, speaking directly to the camera. Pro tip for traveling with elderly relatives. Sometimes you need to create some space for everyone's sanity. Dad's much happier in the countryside anyway. Old people don't really appreciate art. They'd planned this. All of it. The concern, the healing trip, the family bonding. It was all performance art with a $15,000 price tag. And now, they were publicly mocking me while spending my money on champagne and designer handbags. I stared at the screen, my hands steady for the first time in hours. The grief and panic were crystallizing into something much more dangerous. Something they'd never seen before. What I learned about them later would prove they'd made the biggest mistake of their entitled lives. But first, I had some calls to make. Nothing prepares you for seeing your own son celebrate abandoning you on Instagram. I scrolled through Derek's feed with growing disbelief. There he was, raising a glass of champagne at some upscale Florence restaurant, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. The timestamp showed it was posted 2 hours after they'd left me stranded. Spontaneous romantic getaway. Clinking glasses, sometimes the best trips are the ones you don't plan. Hashtag blessed, hashtag Tuscany, hashtag living your best life. The comments were a knife twist with every line. OMG, you two deserve this. Finally ditched the dead weight, faced with tears of joy. Old people are such a drag on vacation. Smart move. Your dad will be fine. He's probably happier without you guys cramping his style anyway, faced with rolling eyes. Derek had liked every single comment. But Brittany's Instagram stories were even worse. A parade of luxury purchases, all made with my credit cards. A $3,000 Gucci handbag. Designer shoes. A spa treatment package at their Florence hotel that cost more than most people's rent. Each purchase was captioned with casual cruelty. Retail therapy hits different in Italy, money with wings, and finally can shop without someone complaining about prices. Shopping bags. The final story was a boomerang video of her laughing, champagne in hand, with a text overlay. Best decision ever. Should have done this days ago. Clinking glasses sparkles. I sat back in a computer chair, my hands trembling with something that wasn't grief anymore. It was pure, crystallized rage. They'd planned this from the beginning. The family healing trip was never about healing. It was about getting me to fund their romantic getaway while making me disappear when I became inconvenient. Signora Mackenzie? Juliana appeared beside me, concern creasing her features. You look pale. What did you find? I turned the screen toward her. She didn't need to understand English to grasp what she was seeing. The photos told the story clearly enough. Her face darkened as she scrolled through the posts. Madonna mia, she whispered, then called out in rapid Italian. Roberto, vieni qua subito. Her husband appeared, took one look at the screen, and launched into what I could only assume was a string of Italian curses. Other guests began gathering. An elderly Italian couple, the young desk clerk, even the cook from the restaurant downstairs. As they talked rapidly in Italian around me, I understood every word. They were outraged on my behalf, calling Derek and Brittany vergogna, shameful, and suggesting various punishments that range from legal action to more creative forms of justice. The elderly woman, Signora Benedetti, patted my shoulder and spoke directly to me in careful English. This is not how family behaves. In Italy, we respect our elders. These young people, they have no honor. Her husband nodded vigorously. My grandson, he would never. This is disgusting behavior. But what struck me most was how the community had instantly rallied around me. These strangers showed more concern for my welfare than my own blood family. We call the police, Roberto declared, reaching for the phone. This is elder abuse. They steal your documents, abandon you. This is crime. No, I said quietly, surprising everyone. Not yet. 40 years building my business had taught me about dealing with people who think they can use you. You don't react emotionally. You plan strategically. You gather information. You strike when you have overwhelming advantage. And right now, Derek and Brittany had handed me more advantages than they could possibly imagine. I need to make some phone calls first. I continued, my voice steadying as a plan began forming in my mind. Research some things. Juliana looked puzzled. But signore, they have stolen from you, abandoned you. They have. I agreed, standing up from the computer. And they're about to learn that was the biggest mistake of their lives. I smiled for the first time in days, but not because I was happy. The truth was, Derek and Brittany thought they'd abandoned a helpless old man who'd be too confused and overwhelmed to fight back. They saw Walter Mackenzie, the contractor from Boston, the guy who said use instead of you, and wore work boots to fancy restaurants. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. What I knew about their situation would have terrified them. The restaurant was 3 months behind on rent. Derek had been using the business credit line I'd co-signed on for personal expenses. Brittany's influencer career was built on credit card debt and aspirational lies. They thought they were so clever, documenting their betrayal on social media for all their friends to see. But they just created a perfect evidence trail of their callousness and greed. More importantly, they had no idea about the insurance policies I'd built into every financial arrangement I'd ever made with Derek. The safeguards, the documentation, the careful legal language my lawyer had insisted on after Derek's first business failure 5 years ago. They thought I was just a grieving old fool writing checks out of loneliness. They were about to discover that this old fool had been documenting everything. Juliana, I said, my voice taking on the authoritative tone I'd used to run construction crews for 4 decades. I need privacy to make some calls. Can you show me to a quiet room? She nodded, leading me to a small office behind the front desk. As I settled into a chair and pulled out my backup phone, the one Derek and Brittany didn't know about, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Maria's diagnosis. Control, purpose, the satisfaction of having a job to do and the skills to do it right. First, I said to myself, scrolling through my contacts, I had some research to do and a few calls to make. My lawyer would want to hear about this. So would my bank, and my accountant, and definitely my insurance company. They want to play games with family money? Perfect. I wrote the rule book. What they didn't know was that this game had been over before it started. They'd just been too arrogant to realize they were already losing. I dialed my lawyer's emergency line, calculating the time difference. It was early morning in Boston, but Bill Kowalski had been handling my business for 20 years. He'd take this call. Bill, it's Walt McKenzie. I need you to pull Derek's file. We've got a situation. They thought abandoning me meant I was powerless. They forgot I built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing. Over the next 3 hours, I systematically dismantled their little scheme from Juliana's back office. It felt good to be working again, to have my hands on the controls instead of being a passenger in my own life. First call was to Bill Kowalski, my lawyer. 20 years of handling my business meant he didn't waste time with pleasantries. Jesus, Walt, they really did this. Screenshot are already in your email, I said, watching him open the files in real time, along with the abandonment note. What are my options? Elder abuse, fraud, theft. Walt, this is criminal. But more importantly for your immediate situation, Derek's been accessing that business credit line you co-signed. Unauthorized charges going back 3 months. My jaw tightened. How much? $47,000. Mostly restaurant supplies, but also personal expenses. Designer clothes, that car payment, even their rent. So that's how they'd funded their lifestyle while planning my abandonment. They'd been stealing from me for months. Cancel everything, I said. All cards, all access, all accounts. Today. Walt, that'll leave Derek's restaurant without operating capital. That's the point, Bill. The restaurant's already dead. They just don't know it yet. Pull the life support. Next was my bank, then the credit card companies. I'd built relationships with these people over decades of business. When Walter McKenzie called saying his cards had been stolen, things moved fast. Mr. McKenzie, we're showing recent charges in Florence, Italy. High-end retail luxury hotels. Unauthorized. Cancel the cards immediately and flag any future attempts. Done, sir. We'll also need you to file a police report for fraud charges. Already in progress. But the real revelation came when I called my accountant, Janet Murphy. She'd been handling my books since Derek was in high school, and her voice went ice cold when I explained the situation. Walt, I need to tell you something about that restaurant investment. Derek's been calling me for weeks. Try and get access to your other accounts. Said you were getting confused and needed help managing your finances. My blood pressure spiked. What did you tell him? To go to hell, obviously. But Walt, there's more. That 3 months of credit line abuse? It coincides exactly with when the restaurant's rent went into arrears. They've been using your money to cover their asses while telling everyone else you were becoming unreliable. The scope of their betrayal was breathtaking. They hadn't just abandoned me. They'd been systematically destroying my reputation while stealing my money. Janet, I need every document, every transaction record, every email Derek sent you, and I need it overnight to Florence. Consider it done. Walt, nail them to the wall. While I worked, the hotel had become my unofficial command center. Roberto brought me espresso and taught me what he thought were useful Italian phrases. Davi il consolato americano, he said slowly. Where's American consulate? I repeated it back perfectly, letting him think he was teaching me. Davi il consolato americano. Grazie, Roberto. Bene, bene. You learn fast. If only he knew I'd been having this exact conversation with my Italian tutor 5 years ago. Juliana checked on me regularly, bringing updates from Derek and Brittany's social media feeds. Their celebration was escalating. More expensive restaurants, a couple's massage, shopping on the Ponte Vecchio. They're spending come side dice like kings, she reported, shaking her head in disgust. Like kings on my credit cards, I corrected grimly. But then came the post that made my hands clench into fists. Derek had filmed himself at the Uffizi, speaking directly to the camera with that smug expression I've been seeing too much of lately. Pro tip, for anyone traveling with elderly relatives, he was saying, gesturing casually at priceless Renaissance art behind him. Sometimes you need to create space for everyone's mental health. Old people can't really handle the pace of real travel anyway. They're much happier when they can just, I don't know, sit somewhere quiet and not be confused by all the culture. The comments were even worse. Dude, you're so patient. I would have ditched him day one. Old people are such a buzzkill on trips. Smart thinking. Your dad's probably relieved, TBH. Museums are wasted on that generation. They told our mutual friends back home that I'd decided to stay longer in the countryside because I was overwhelmed by the cities, making me sound like I was losing my mental faculties. But Brittany's latest shopping haul pushed me over the edge. A $3,000 Gucci handbag, bought with my card 2 hours ago. Her story showed her admiring it in the mirror with the caption, "When your father-in-law finally understands what you deserve. Money with Wings handbag hashtag treat yourself hashtag guilt-free." Guilt-free. Like abandoning me was some kind of favor they'd done for themselves. They mistook grief for weakness. Big mistake. What I discovered about their finances 3 months ago finally made sense. The late-night phone calls Derek thought I couldn't hear. The way Brittany suddenly became interested in my estate planning. The restaurant mysterious cash flow problems despite my continuous investment. They thought I was just a sad old man writing checks. They should have paid attention to what I was writing down. Every loan, every investment, every dollar I'd given Derek came with documentation, conditions, legal safeguards that my lawyer had insisted on after Derek's first business failure. They've been so focused on my grief, they've forgotten that grief doesn't erase 40 years of business experience. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Janet had worked fast. The overnight package was already at the Florence Hotel, waiting for pickup. Derek and Brittany had no idea that while they were celebrating their clever abandonment scheme, I just cut off their lifeline and armed myself with enough documentation to end them financially. But I wasn't done yet. The evening brought Roberto's family for dinner, his nephew Paolo, who worked in Florence's hospitality industry, and his daughter Francesca, home from university in Rome. As they chatted in Italian over Giuliana's homemade pasta, I learned more about Derek and Brittany's behavior than any private investigator could have uncovered. Zio Roberto. Paolo was saying, "You should hear what they're saying about the Americans at the Hotel Davanzati. Loud, rude, demanding upgrades they haven't paid for." I filed that information away too. They were about to learn that some lessons come with interest compounded. My phone rang. Derek's number. Finally, time for phase 2. The thing about construction work is it teaches you that the strongest foundations are built quietly while people aren't paying attention. Derek's call came at exactly 6:47 p.m., just as I was finishing Giuliana's incredible ragu with her family. The panic in his voice was immediate and satisfying. "Dad, thank God you answered. We have a huge problem." I took my time swallowing my bite of pasta, savoring both the food and the moment. "What kind of problem, Derek?" "Our cards aren't working. Any of them. The hotel here is demanding payment for tonight. Or they're calling police for $1,000. Dad, we're stranded." Funny how that feels, isn't it, son? Being stranded somewhere without resources. The silence stretched long enough for Derek to process what I just said. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted from panic to that manipulative tone I was beginning to recognize. "Dad, come on. We were just having fun. We were coming back tomorrow, I swear. This was just, we needed some couple time, you know? The grief, it's been hard on all of us." I stood up from the dinner table, walking out to the small terrace where I could speak privately. Through the window, I could see Giuliana's family watching with concerned expressions. "Derek, I've seen your social media posts." Another silence. Longer this time. "Dad, we were just blowing off steam. We didn't mean." Finally free to enjoy Italy the right way, I quoted back to him. "Best decision ever. Should have ditched the dead, wait days ago." "Which part of that didn't you mean?" I heard him whispering frantically to Brittany in the background, then her voice getting closer to phone. "Derek, let me talk to him." But Derek kept the phone. "Dad, please. We're sorry. We made a mistake. But you can't just leave us here with no money, no way to get home. Actually, I can. You took my passport, my wallet, and my phone, and abandoned me in a foreign country with nothing but a cruel note. At least you still have your identification." "But Dad, I also know about the unauthorized credit line charges." $47,000, Derek. 3 months of stealing from me while telling people I was becoming unreliable. The sharp intake of breath told me he hadn't expected me to discover that so quickly. Dad, that was just temporary. The restaurant is finished. I've canceled everything. Every card, every account, every bit of access you had to my money. Your little celebration just became very expensive. You can't do this. Brittany's voice was getting louder in the background. Tell him we'll sue him for elder abuse. Put her on the phone, I said calmly. Derek's protests were overruled. Brittany grabbed the phone, her voice sharp with entitlement and growing panic. Walt, this is ridiculous. We're your family. You can't just cut us off because your feelings got hurt. My feelings got hurt? I kept my voice level, professional. The same tone I'd use to fire contractors who try to cheat me. Brittany, you abandoned me in a foreign country, stole my identification, publicly mocked me on social media, and spent $3,000 of my money on a handbag while calling it guilt-free. Which part of that was about my feelings? That's not how it happened. You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic. I let that hang in the air. Tell me, Brittany, how exactly would you describe abandoning a 67-year-old man 6 months after his wife died? You're fine. You're in some cute little hotel, probably having a better time without us anyway. Old people love that quiet countryside stuff. There it was, the casual dismissal, the assumption that I was too simple to appreciate anything real. The same tone she'd use in her social media posts. I see. So this was a favor to me. Exactly. We gave you what you wanted, peace and quiet, and we got what we needed, a real vacation. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. I was genuinely fascinated by her logic, except I paid $15,000 for the privilege of being abandoned, and you spent an additional $47,000 of my money without permission. That money was going to Derek anyway when you're gone. We just needed it now. When I'm gone. Not if, when. They'd been planning for my death, spending my money like an inheritance they'd already received. I have a proposition for you both, I said finally. Thank God, Brittany breathed. Wire us the money and we'll... No, you're going to publicly apologize on social media. You're going to tell the truth about what you did and why. You're going to admit to the financial fraud. And then maybe I'll consider helping you get home. That's insane. Brittany's voice went shrill. We're not going to humiliate ourselves on Instagram because you can't handle a joke. Then enjoy Florence. I hear the police stations are quite authentic. You're being an asshole. Walt, this is why Derek never calls you. This is why Maria probably wanted to die rather than spend more time with. The line went dead. I'd hung up before she could finish that sentence, but the damage was done. She just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. My hands were shaking as I walked back into the hotel, but not with hurt anymore. With cold, focused rage. Juliana looked up from clearing the dinner table. Everything okay, Signora Mackenzie? Before I could answer, my phone rang again. Derek this time, without Brittany. Dad, please don't listen to her. She's panicking. She doesn't mean... Put her back on the phone, I said quietly. Dad, no, she's upset. She's saying crazy things. Put her on the phone, Derek. Now. I heard the argument in the background, then Brittany's voice, defiant and angry. What, Walt? Going to lecture me about respect? About family? You want to know what I really think about your precious Maria, and you're pathetic. Brittany, I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. I want you to keep talking. Say exactly what you're thinking. But I should mention that you're on speakerphone, and Juliana's entire family is listening to every word you're saying about Italians and their backward small towns. The silence was deafening. Juliana speaks 5 languages, including perfect English, I continued. Her husband Roberto fought in the Italian resistance. Their nephew Paolo works in Florence's hospitality industry. Their daughter Francesca is getting her doctorate in international law at Rome University. And you just call them stupid. I didn't. Oh, but you did. And now you've just made this very easy for me. I looked around at Juliana's family. Their faces showed the kind of quiet dignity that comes from generations of real hardship, real values, real respect for family and community. Everything Derek and Brittany lacked. "I'll see you both soon," I said into the phone. What Brittany didn't know was that Juliana's entire family had understood every word of her racist tirade. And what neither of them knew was that I was about to have some very interesting conversations in fluent Italian. They had no idea I was 3 steps ahead of them now. But they were about to find out. What Brittany didn't realize is that small Italian towns have long memories and strong opinions about family loyalty. The moment I hung up the phone, Juliana's entire family erupted in rapid Italian. But this time, instead of sitting quietly while they discussed my situation, I understood every heated word. "Che schifezza," Roberto was saying, his face red with indignation. What disgusting people. To abandon their father and then insult our home. "Papa's right," added Francesca, her voice sharp with anger. "Did you hear how she talked about stupid Italians in backwards towns? After we've shown nothing but kindness to her father-in-law." Paolo was already on his phone. "I'm calling my friend Marco at the Hotel Davanzati. If these people think they can disrespect our family." Juliana looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Signore Mackenzie, I am so sorry you heard such terrible words about your late wife. No one should speak of the dead that way." I stood up slowly, decision crystallizing in my mind. It was time to stop pretending. "Juliana," I said carefully, "what if I told you I understood every word Brittany just said? And every word you've all been saying about my situation since yesterday?" The room went silent. Every eye focused on me. Sono fluent in Italiano, I continued, switching languages. "Ho studiato per 15 anni. Capisco tutto." The shock on their faces was immediate and complete. Juliana's hand flew to her mouth. "You speak Italian," she gasped, switching back to English. "But why didn't you tell us?" "Because sometimes it's better to let people show you who they really are when they think you can't understand them," I replied, still in Italian. "Derek and Brittany have no idea. They think I'm just a confused old American who can't handle real travel." Roberto started laughing first, a deep belly laugh that shook his whole frame. "Madonna, you understood everything. Every conversation, every plan we made to help you. Every word. I confirmed. And I want you all to know how grateful I am. In 2 days, you've shown me more family loyalty than my actual family has in months." Paolo was grinning now, his phone still in his hand. "Zero, Walt, you magnificent bastard. Do you know what this means? You've been gathering intelligence this whole time." "Exactly. And now I need your help with something more official." Over the next hour, I explained my situation fully, in Italian, to people who understood the value of family, respect, and community justice. Their outrage grew with every detail. "They stole from you for months," Francesca said, her law student mind already working the angles. "This isn't just abandonment, it's systematic fraud. And they documented it all on social media," Paolo added, showing his phone. "Look, my friend Marco sent me screenshots from their hotel. They've been making demands, complaining about service, acting like entitled tourists. The staff hates them. But it was Roberto who understood the deeper betrayal. Walt, in our culture, when someone takes care of you, you protect them. You honor them. What they did, it's not just wrong, it's evil." That's when my phone started buzzing with notifications. My lawyer had been busy. "Bill," I answered, switching back to English. "Walt, it's worse than we thought. Derek's been forging your signature on loan documents. The restaurant's been using your credit as collateral for additional debts. We're talking about criminal fraud, not just family drama." I closed my eyes. How bad? 200,000 in unauthorized debt, all tied to your name. The restaurant's 3 weeks from foreclosure, and Derek's been telling creditors that you approved everything. Around me, Juliana's family had gone quiet, understanding enough English to grasp the magnitude of Derek's betrayal. "There's more," Bill continued. "I've been getting calls from Boston. Word's getting out about their social media posts. Your contractor friends, the guys from the union, Maria's church group, they're all asking questions. People are pissed, Walt. What kind of questions? The kind that end with, how can we help you destroy these little shits? Despite everything, I smiled. 40 years in construction creates bonds that don't break easily. Bill, I need you to prepare everything. Full documentation, criminal fraud charges, everything. But don't file yet. I want to handle this my way first. After I hung up, Paolo was practically vibrating with excitement. Walt, I just got off the phone with Marco. Your son and daughter-in-law were just escorted from their hotel for non-payment and disturbing other guests. They're at the train station now, trying to figure out how to get back here. They have no money for a train, Francesca pointed out. No working credit cards, no cash. Marco also said hotel management has shared their photos with other properties in Florence. Paolo continued. Word travels fast in hospitality. They're basically blacklisted from decent hotels now. The justice was already beginning, organically, through the network of people who understood respect and dignity. But Juliana was looking at me with a strange expression. Walt, you planned this, didn't you? Not the abandonment, but you knew this day would come. She was perceptive. I hoped it wouldn't. But I've been documenting everything for months. Every dollar, every conversation, every red flag. My late wife always said, trust but verify. You were protecting yourself. Roberto said with approval. Smart man. I was protecting my legacy. I corrected. I didn't want to leave debts and legal problems for Derek to inherit. I wanted to leave him a successful business and financial security. Instead, I discovered I was funding my own exploitation. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Dad, we're stuck at Florence train station. Please, we're sorry. We need help getting back. I showed the message to the room. The responses were immediate and unified. Let them walk, Paolo said. Let them figure out themselves, Francesca added. Let them understand what helplessness feels like, Roberto concluded. But Juliana was studying my face. You're not going to leave them there, are you? I looked around at these people who become more of a family to me in 2 days than Derek had been in 2 years. No, I said finally. I'm going to Florence tomorrow, but not to rescue them. I switched back to Italian, my voice taking on the tone I'd used to run construction sites for 4 decades. Perfetto, I said, watching their faces light up with understanding. E ora c'è impresario con chi hanno davvero che fare. Perfect. It's time they learned who they're really dealing with. The room erupted in approving voices, plans forming in rapid Italian that Derek and Brittany would never see coming. They thought they knew all my resources. They were wrong. The look on Juliana's face when I spoke perfect Italian was nothing compared to what my son was about to experience. Roberto drove me to Florence the next morning in his ancient Fiat, with Juliana riding shotgun and Paolo following his car. The whole drive, they peppered me with questions about my Italian studies, marveling at how I kept a secret so perfectly. 15 years, Juliana kept repeating, Quindiciani, and you never let on, not once. It started as a surprise for Maria. I explained as we wound through the Tuscan hills. Her grandmother came from Calabria, and Maria always regretted never learning the language. For our 25th anniversary, I was going to bring her here and speak Italian the whole trip. Che romantico, Juliana sighed. But then she got sick. Cancer moved fast. The trip became impossible, but I kept studying, maybe hoping for a miracle, maybe just needing something to focus on while she slept. Roberto caught my eyes in the rearview mirror. She would be proud of you today, Walt, standing up to these people who dishonor her memory. By the time we reached Florence, Paolo had already coordinated with his friend Marco. Derek and Brittany weren't at the train station anymore. They were at the Questura, the police station, being held for hotel fraud and disturbing the peace. They tried to force their way back into the hotel this morning. Marco had reported. When security stopped them, the woman started screaming about stupid Italian peasants and knowing her rights as an American. The desk sergeant at the Questura, Sergeant Ricci, greeted me with respectful sympathy after Paolo explained the situation in rapid Italian. Signore Mackenzie, I am sorry for what your family has done to you. We see this sometimes with tourists who think Italy is their playground. May I see them? I asked in Italian. His eyebrows shot up. Lei parla Italiano. Fluentment. He smiled with genuine warmth. In that case, this will be much easier. Come. Derek and Brittany were in separate holding cells, looking haggard and desperate. 3 days of mounting panic had stripped away their polished facade. Brittany's designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared. Derek's carefully styled hair was disheveled, his face pale with exhaustion. They looked up when I appeared, relief flooding their faces. Dad, thank God. Derek rushed the bars. We've been trying to explain, but nobody speaks English properly here. This is all a misunderstanding. Derek, I said quietly, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Dad, we can explain everything. The hotel thing, the credit cards, everything. We just need... I've been fluent in Italian for 15 years. The words hit him like a physical blow. His mouth fell open, confusion clouding his features. What? Parlo Italiano di quindicii anni, I repeated in Italian, watching his face pale further. I understand every conversation you've had since we arrived. Every insult, every assumption, every lie. Brittany appeared at her cell bars, mascara streaked down her cheeks. That's impossible. You don't speak Italian. You can barely order food without pointing. I learned it from your mother-in-law. I continued, still speaking Italian. I spent 15 years preparing to surprise her with a trip to her grandmother's homeland. Every Tuesday and Thursday night at community college while Derek was in high school. Every evening with language apps while Maria dozed during chemo treatments. The truth was sinking in now. Derek's face had gone ashen. Dad, how? How do you speak Italian? There's a lot you don't know about me, son. Like how I've been documenting your financial abuse for months. The unauthorized credit line access. The forged signatures. The lies to creditors about my mental state. I pulled out the folder that Janet had overnight. Thick with bank statements, legal documents, and printed emails. Everything you've taken from me. Every lie you've told. Every dollar you've stolen. It's all here. Derek was gripping the bars now. Knuckles white. Dad, please let me explain. You told my accountant I was becoming confused and needed help managing my finances. You told creditors I'd approved loans I never knew existed. You spent $47,000 of my money while planning to abandon me in a foreign country. We weren't abandoning you. Brittany interrupted. We were just taking a break. You're so needy since Maria died. We needed space. Space. I let the word hang in the air. Is that what you call posting finally ditched the dead weight on social media? Her face crumpled. You weren't supposed to see that. I've seen everything, Brittany. The shopping sprees with my credit cards. The videos mocking old people who can't handle real travel. The comments from your friends congratulating you on abandoning me. I turned back to Derek, whose eyes were now filled with something that might have been shame. The restaurant is finished, Derek. I've canceled all funding, all credit lines, all support. Your landlord will have eviction papers by tomorrow. Dad, you can't. That's my life's work. Your life's work was built on my money and maintained by stealing from me. That's not a business. Derek, that's a fraud. Sergeant Ricci appeared beside me, speaking in English for their benefit. Signore Mackenzie has filed formal complaint for elder abuse, financial fraud, and theft. These are serious charges in Italy. You can't just abandon us here. Brittany screamed, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. I looked at her steadily. Watch me. But unlike you, I'll give you exactly what you deserve. I opened a folder and pulled out a sheaf of papers. These are your one-way tickets back to Boston. Economy class. They'll be valid once you paid the hotel bills you've accumulated and made formal apologies to the staff you've abused. We don't have money for hotel bills. Derek protested. Then you'll figure out. The same way you expected me to figure out being abandoned in a foreign country with no identification or resources. Through the window, I could see Juliana and Roberto waiting in the courtyard. Real family. People who understood loyalty and respect. I'm going back to Castellina tonight. I continued. Tomorrow, everyone back home gets to see exactly what kind of people you really are. Your social media posts, the financial documents, the police reports, everything. Dad, please. Derek's voice cracked. We're sorry. We made a mistake. Don't destroy our lives over this. I studied my son's face, looking for the boy I'd raised, the man I'd hoped he'd become. But all I saw was entitlement, manipulation, and self-pity. Derek, you destroyed your own life the moment you decided my grief made me weak enough to exploit. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Brittany? Those stupid Italians you've been insulting? Giuliana speaks 5 languages and runs 3 businesses. Roberto fought in the resistance and built this town's first computer network. Their daughter is getting her doctorate in international law. I switched to Italian for Sergeant Ricci's benefit, and they've all been watching how you treat family. As I walked away, I could hear Brittany sobbing and Derek calling my name. But for the first time in months, I felt no urge to turn back and fix their problems. They'd made their choice when they abandoned me. Now they could live with the consequences. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure actions have appropriate consequences. 3 weeks later, I sat in Bill Kowalski's Boston office watching Derek and Brittany's world systematically collapse through a series of legal documents that read like a masterclass in karmic retribution. The restaurant closed yesterday, Bill reported, sliding papers across his desk. Landlord moved fast once your funding disappeared. Derek's looking at personal bankruptcy, and that's before we factor in the criminal charges. The criminal charges were substantial. Elder abuse, financial fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized use of credit facilities. In Massachusetts, these carried serious penalties, especially when the victim was a recently widowed senior citizen. What about the social media evidence? I asked. Bill grinned. Their own posts are the prosecution's best evidence. Nothing says premeditated elder abuse like celebrating the abandonment on Instagram while spending the victim's money. The social media reckoning had been swift and brutal. Once word spread about what really happened in Italy, Derek and Brittany's feeds became ground zero for public outrage. Their original posts mocking me as deadweight were screenshot and shared thousands of times, each repost generating more condemnation. Brittany's influencer career died overnight. Her follower count plummeted from 12,000 to less than 800, mostly hate followers documenting her downfall. Brands canceled sponsorship deals. Her comments sections became wastelands of disgust and moral judgment. Derek fared worse. The restaurant industry is small, and word travels fast about owners who exploit elderly family members. No investor would touch him. No supplier would extend credit. Former employees shared stories about his arrogance and financial mismanagement. But the real justice came from my actual community back home. The Ironworkers Union, where I'd been a member for 40 years, took up my cause with a kind of loyalty Derek never understood. They organized a social media campaign that dwarfed anything Brittany had ever achieved, sharing the true story of my abandonment with working-class communities across New England. Maria's Church, St. Mary's in South Boston, where we'd been married 37 years ago, held a special service honoring my courage in the face of family betrayal. Father Murphy's sermon about respecting elders went viral on the church's Facebook page. My old construction crews, guys I'd worked with for decades, started showing up at Derek's restaurant before it closed, not to cause trouble, but to ask pointed questions about how he treated his father. The kind of questions that make customers uncomfortable and investors nervous. The best part, Bill continued, is that they're both working now. Derek's doing night shift at a warehouse in Quincy. Brittany's waiting tables at a chain restaurant in Medford. Minimum wage, both of them. Good, I said without a trace of guilt. They need to learn what honest work feels like. The financial restitution would take years to complete. Derek owed me $247,000 in stolen funds, unauthorized charges, and legal damages. Brittany was jointly liable for everything spent during the Italy trip. Their wages would be garnished until every penny was repaid, with interest. More importantly, I'd restructure my estate entirely. Derek was no longer heir to anything. My construction business, sold months ago, had generated enough wealth to secure my independence forever. The new will left everything to charities, with a small trust fund for any future grandchildren, managed by independent trustees, not their parents. They tried to contest the will, Bill mentioned casually. Claimed you were mentally incompetent due to grief. I laughed, a sound that had become easier over the past few months. How did that work out? Judge threw it out immediately. Hard to claim someone's incompetent when they just orchestrated a complex international legal strategy while speaking fluent Italian. That brought me to the real transformation in my life. I returned to Castellina in Chieti 6 months later, welcomed like a returning family member by Giuliana and Roberto. This time, I spoke Italian openly, conversing with locals who marveled at my fluency and admire my handling of the situation with the ungrateful Americans. The local newspaper, La Nazione, had even run a story about my experience, framing it as an example of how Italian community values triumph over modern selfishness. I became something of a local celebrity, the American who understood what family really meant. I've been thinking about buying a small place in Tuscany. I told Bill, something permanent. His eyebrows rose. Permanent. 6 months here, 6 months there. I want to live the life Maria and I planned, just differently than we expected. Through the office window, I could see Boston Harbor, the city where I'd built my business and raised my son. It would always be home, but it no longer felt like a prison of grief and betrayal. My phone buzzed with a message from Derek. Dad, please. We've learned our lesson. Can we talk? I showed it to Bill, who snorted with disgust. They still don't get it. They get it. I corrected. They're just finally facing consequences for the first time in their lives. I typed back, Derek, you made your choice when you abandoned me in Italy. I'm just refusing to fund your mistakes anymore. That's not punishment. That's independence. The response came quickly. You're destroying our lives. I almost laughed. The same words Brittany had screamed in the Italian police station, as if I owed them a comfortable life regardless of how they treated me. No, I typed back. I'm just not paying for them anymore. 6 months later, I stood on the terrace of my new apartment in Castellina in Chieti, watching the sunset paint the vineyards gold and crimson. Giuliana was bringing dinner up from the restaurant below. Real family sharing a real meal built on respect and genuine affection. My phone sat silent on the table. Derek and Brittany had stopped calling months ago, finally understanding that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with apologies born of financial desperation. Roberto emerged from the kitchen carrying a bottle of wine older than my son, grinning as he always did when he had good news to share. Walt, my friend, you'll never guess what I heard today. Tell me. That woman, Brittany. She tried to restart her Instagram with a redemption story about learning from mistakes. You know how many followers she has now. How many? 43? He laughed so hard he nearly dropped the wine. 43 people want to hear about her redemption. Giuliana appeared with plates of her incredible osso buco, shaking her head at her husband's delight in others' misfortune. Roberto, you're terrible, she scolded, but she was smiling too. Though I admit, it's satisfying to see justice served. As we sat down to eat, I thought about Maria, buried now in a small cemetery behind St. Mary's in South Boston. She'd have loved this. The warm evening air, the good food, the easy laughter of people who care about each other without expecting payment in return. She'd also have been proud of me for finally standing up to Derek's manipulation, for choosing self-respect over desperate family loyalty. To Maria, I said, raising my glass, who would have loved seeing Italy through my eyes? To Maria, Roberto and Giuliana echoed, understanding that some toasts honor the living and the dead equally. Later, as I sat alone on the terrace under stars that Maria would never see, I reflected on the strange lesson Derek and Brittany had taught me. They thought they were teaching me about independence, about surviving alone in a foreign country, without family support. They were right. I learned I was strong enough to independence myself from them. And for the first time since Maria died, I felt truly free. If you enjoyed the story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your opinions of this story in the comments. To listen to more stories, click on one of the boxes showing on your screen. Thank you for watching.